we're gonna try this again. It seems my Wi-Fi just like craps out on me. So hopefully this works a little bit better. But we are going to solder, or attempt to solder. We're gonna see how it goes. This has been sitting out here for weeks at this point. I don't know how well it's gonna go. Safety concerns when it comes to soldering. Definitely a heat resistant glove, which looks like this, generally. So you would wear this. I wear this because it's lead, and the flux, it's just a little bit more protection, even though you're touching lead like the entire time. But just a little bit extra precaution on it. But the heat resistant glove, this heats up a lot. So in general, you should absolutely be wearing it. I kind of only wear it when I'm doing the beaded edge, and when you flip your piece and you're working with gravity, always wear a heat resistant glove. I also really like gel flux. Nothing to do with a safety precaution, but you should wear glasses as well. Safety goggles or glasses, because those fumes will kind of come back at you too. And always in an open, well-ventilated area. Even if you're outside, people will still use the exhaust fans. So take it seriously. There's flux poisoning, there's lead poisoning, which is generally only when you consume it. So after you're finished working on your piece, wash your hands thoroughly. Don't let it touch any surfaces where you cook food. If you do, wash it really thoroughly as well. The flux, I just recently switched to gel flux, and I will never go back to liquid flux, which is another thing that was new since doing that. I'm still kind of learning how to use it and kind of figuring out how much is too much, how much is not enough. So bear with me, but you want to put it on your solder lines. Some people you'll see will only do like a dot here, a dot here, a dot here. They'll go and they'll solder or tack it together. Then they'll go back and put it all over it. That's a personal preference. You can do whatever you're comfortable with. You always want to tack your piece first. I learned there's actually a reason behind it, not just so that your pieces aren't moving around, but it also heats up the copper foil. Kind of warms it up. So we're gonna hope that my soldering iron is great. This is the rheostat, like I said. I did increase the temperature, and I honestly don't know how well it's gonna go. So I'm just gonna solder, and so you can kind of hear what it sounds like, because I think that's way better than me talking. Get some stuff out of the way here. One thing that I will say is that when you are using the rheostat, as just any in general, but especially with the gel flux, you want to make sure that you're continuously wiping it off, with the tip off with a sponge to keep it clean. So after I go around on that first round of it, that's when I go back and kind of smooth it out a little bit, which is why I wasn't really too concerned about it. A lot of people get really frustrated watching me solder because most of the professionals will tell you to hold either this on top of your iron or below it and drag it along, but this is a heavier weight and I'm still, there's a lot to get used to when it comes to making stained glass. I don't know if you heard that or not, but there are salamanders and they are running around the garage right now, so I hope one doesn't come near me because this will turn into a horror movie instead of a stained glass class. And I wish I could zoom in a little bit more on here while I'm on a live, but some of my other videos, you get a better idea of seeing those solder lines. And if it's flat, sometimes you have to add more flux. Sometimes it's just because the temperature is too high. Sometimes it's because you don't have enough solder. They're all little things that you'll kind of learn as you're, as you get it more experienced. I also know that once I'm finished soldering the main part, the main lines, I'm gonna have to come back and smooth it out anyway. So I can tell that this is like so hot, which is where I'm really struggling with that rheostat temperature and figuring out what to actually do with it. Because this piece is so much hotter, which means I'm more susceptible to a fracture in the glass. And that's not something you ever want to happen. But if I turn it lower, which I'm gonna do, it's not gonna make as smooth of lines. This is when those heat resistant gloves come in really handy too. Hi Anne, thanks for joining. I had to restart it because my Wi-Fi is still having issues, but I was explaining at the very beginning that like I started this weeks ago and my progress, this is a pattern that I just finished. Like the pieces have improved so much. So coming back to this where I can tell that my cuts weren't good or everything's uneven is kind of funny to me to go back to where I was weeks ago. But it's a great opportunity to show a beginner stained glass, but also how things go wrong and how to figure out what to fix or what should be fixed. How are you doing, by the way? Thank you. Yeah, I think I figured out the secret to patina. I'm very excited about it. And I learned that you can just rewash, like wash it off, scrub it with steel wool if you're not happy with the patina. Scrub it really, really good again with Dawn dish soap, that steel wool, let it dry, and then repatina it. Looks perfect. And then finishing it off with Pledge instead of a wax. Oops, see, I knew that was going to happen there. Has made a world of difference. So this down here where it kind of dripped off, where in the very beginning I was kind of talking about it, I knew this would kind of happen. I'm going to turn it a little bit lower so I can tin the edges as well. Because there was that gap there at the bottom, there was nothing for that solder to stick to, so it kind of just falls through. Which is just something that you figure out and get used to. And learn how to adapt with it, but I knew that would happen on there. And this step is called tinning. If you're doing a beaded edge especially, well, if you were doing U-came around it, you would not do this because you would do it when you're adding your U-came or not have it foiled at all on the edges. But for a beaded edge, you just want to tin it. I generally have my temperature turned down lower because when you're just tinning it, there's not as much solder on there. And sometimes the heat will be too much, especially depending on the temperature that you're using. The heat will be too much and the copper foil will just get peeled right off. And we don't want that. And I know that I'm going to have to come back and fix it anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that in this current moment. But it depends on the pattern and what step you're doing. And the reason you tin it instead of kind of having more of a glob on there, although I've still not figured this part out, I still really struggle with it, is because theoretically when you're doing your beaded edge, the beaded edge is supposed to come over the edge onto this line, this tinned line, and sort of bevel over it. I've not really had that happen yet. So this is, the next part's going to be the beaded edge, and this is, I don't know how well it's going to film, but this is when you absolutely want to have a heat-resistant glove. And I'm kind of hoping that something will happen in a second here that'll show you why it's so important. And you flux the area that you're working on or all the way around. Sometimes you have to add the flux again. And for a beaded edge, you want to lower your temperature. Again, the rheostat is very difficult to learn. So I'm just hoping that I have the correct temperature, the correct temperature on there. But it does help if you have a jig to hold your piece, because then you kind of have an extra hand. You basically, and if your solder's not sticking to it, tin your tip. And that's going to help as well with the solder to stick to it. Sometimes it'll just fall off, like you see there. Could be that your temperature is too high. It could be that you don't have, your tip is too dirty. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but you take a little glob of solder, and you can see this one's not melted quite as well. So I think the temperature has to be adjusted a little bit on the rheostat, but we're going to see how it works. You take a little bit, and then you just dab it on there, and you kind of just keep going with it. And now, I don't know if you can see, you have to let it sit, because if you don't and you move it around, that solder is going to roll over. But as you get to the edge, it kind of continues to bead, and you have to move your hand with it so that gravity is not pulling it one direction or the other, and you're getting a flat edge, which is not as easy as you think it is, but which is why the jigs kind of help. And so I don't know if you saw that splatter, but that is one of the reasons you absolutely need to use a heat resistant glove, especially when you're working on the beaded edge. And you just kind of tap it along. Straight lines are a lot easier to work with. And at the end, I'll show that Mother Mary again so you can see how much straight lines are, how much easier they are to work with than the round. And so I can tell based on just what's happening with the flux and how much it's kind of burning and smoking, which is not a good thing, and why you want those exhaust fans around you in a well-ventilated area. I have too much flux on there. And you definitely want to keep wiping off your tip when that happens, but all the time as well. So I don't know if you can see how dark it is here. All of this will wash right off after you're done soldering and go to wash your piece. So nothing to be worried about or scared about. Perfectly normal. And you just kind of gotta keep working with gravity. It's difficult to get used to. A lot of times I have like spills and I have to go back and fix it. So that's why I kind of wasn't concerned really about the solder lines, because I knew I'd go back and fix them at the end. So I'll show you, I mean, in the beginning I knew that it was gonna be a little bit of an issue with some of these pieces that didn't quite fit together well. And this is where I'm not sure if I'm gonna have to raise the temperature of my solder iron or not. The rheostat soldering iron is fascinating. I don't know if it just doesn't hold consistent heat or if it is the iron that I'm using itself. But if I were to originally solder on a 3 like I'm using right now, there would be lumps of solder everywhere. It would not be smooth. But right now it's smoothing it out. So it's just interesting to see what's going on. And so sometimes when you get to the edge, like I just did here, it's kind of going over the side again. You usually have to let it cool, and you just gotta figure out how to tap it until you can get it to stay on there and a little more clean. So on the other side, I'm probably gonna have to clean it up. Sometimes when you tap it, I don't know if you can really see on here. I know it's hard to see when it's so far away, but when I was tapping, it leaves these little waves. So you have to figure out the difference in tapping and just running a smooth line. Oh, we talked about this before. Was that part of the jig that you guys held, or was that because you didn't have gloves, or part of like both of it? Because I remember you mentioned something like that before. And I don't know why I'm fighting it so hard to just like order one of the jigs online, because they're only like 20 bucks. So I do have to get one. And sometimes, a lot of times, I'm kind of going to mess it up on purpose right now so that I can show you. When you're running your solder lines and you get to a joint is what they call it, it's called a cold joint because your solder hasn't been like warmed up properly. So you'll see, and it's probably on this side a little bit better. It's actually not that bad on this side, but sometimes you'll have like more of a wave or more of a imperfection in your solder because it's a cold joint is what they call it. So long lines are a lot easier to work with soldering, I've learned, than the short ones. And that's just part of soldering and something you kind of got to get used to and figure out. I can't think of the name of it, but they use them for grinding. Is that kind of similar? Where it would hold the glass, but you'd still be holding the clamp. So do you hold the clamp then, or is the clamp a separate thing? I'm curious if it's the same thing that they use for grinding. I think it's called like Nick's Grinder Mate that I'm thinking of. So this piece over here is just kind of continuously falling flat. I do think it's because of the gap that I had in there. It could be because I don't have enough solder. It could be because I need to add flux. There are so many variables that it could be, and you just kind of have to test it and figure it out. And sometimes you'll know. Like for me, I have a feeling it's the gap because I knew going into it I would have some issues in certain areas. I'm gonna purposely kind of show you what it looks like if you're not fully, if I wasn't trying, and this would be so messed up, and now that I'm trying to mess it up, it's actually not turning out half bad. But I'm kind of hoping to show. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm curious about that. Because if it's a similar concept to that, and I wonder, were they easier to work with, or I wonder why you guys used those. Unless it was just kind of in place of the gloves. So on down here, oops. And I know it's so hard to see the angle, the lighting, all of that stuff, how close I can get in without it blurring. But you can kind of see those little waves. That's kind of what I was purposely trying to do. I was trying to do it on this side and they don't really exist on this side. But also, if you can tell how much flatter this side is compared to this side, and this side has like the little joints where they are, you can tell you would go through, smooth them out a little bit more. Sometimes you have to take off some solder, but you would just tip it. And I can kind of show you because that's what we're here for. You would tip it and let it fall. And then you can go through and fix it. Obviously, you wouldn't want this much of an issue with your solder. But then you would go through and just kind of fix it up again, smooth it out. But But honestly, as we're doing this, I'm fascinated by the fact that this is at a 3 and as smooth as it is. So I do think it's the soldering iron itself. So if you wanted to, if you were hanging your piece, instead of, you usually go into it knowing if you want to add a hook or I'm curious about that. Yeah, so it has to sit by itself then, if it would free up your hand, right? Depending on the pattern itself, depending on a lot of variables, for the sake of this video, I'm just going to put a hook right up top. You always want to put it on your back side of your piece. This came with one of the copper foil pieces or materials that I got, so I've been using this to make my round hooks for it. I wish it was a little bit thinner, but it's what I have. So you just take some copper wire. This is a 18 gauge, which I found works the best. 20 gauge is thinner and it's just a little bit too flexible. You can get it pre-tinned, which makes it easier to work with as well. This is just what I have, so it's kind of what I've been using. And you take it and wrap it around. I always add a tail because it offers a little bit more reinforcement. There are some patterns that you can't because it doesn't have a hinge point to kind of, not a hinge point, it doesn't have like a joint to attach it to. And then you would just flex it. You want to flex where you're going to add the hook, and you also want to flex the jump ring itself on both sides. If you don't do that, your solder won't stick to it, just like in copper, in making your stained glass. I have found that you should, if you're using regular wire, tin it before you put it onto your piece, because sometimes it heats up too much and your actual jump ring will fall off while you're working on it. So if you tin it, you don't really have to worry about it too much. The tail part's not that important as long as it's flexed. And generally speaking, I try to put my soldering iron up a little bit more temperature-wise. When I do this, it's just easier to work with, but I want to show you the last part before I have to jump off of here. Some people will have, either they'll stack glass underneath here or do something that they can just rest this here so they don't have to worry about using their hand like this. Also, some people will not solder this part, which is honestly a better option. I just never can get my brain to remember not to solder certain areas. So you just put it on there. Sometimes you have to let it warm up a little bit. The great thing is that if you mess up, it comes right off, right? So, and sometimes that happens. I should have left it on there. Now it's gonna make it look like it's so difficult to do this, and I promise it's not. This is one of the easiest parts of making stained glass for me. But it does take some getting used to, because you want to pull away, and if you pull away too soon, it heats it up. So you just gotta get used to the, make sure you turn it off. A little bit hot. So then you would go through again, fix any, like this glob happened because of the jump ring there, so I would take that off, fix any lines that I had. You would go inside and wash this piece. The biggest thing that I learned about getting that perfect patina, like this black, deep black patina, clean, evenly distributed, is a steel wool pad. I just use Dawn dish soap. They do have actual cleaners for it, but you want to scrub the heck out of it. And I know that I did not do that with this. I didn't know about the steel wool at this point, So I'm kind of hoping, and I can kind of see right here, I know the patina is not going to be that good there, and I'm hoping that I can do it so that I can show you what it looks like. But you want to like scrub the heck out of your piece. Just steel wool and Dawn dish soap. You want to make sure it's dry before you patina it. You can leave it for like 24 hours, some people will. I usually don't leave it that long, but you want to make sure that it's completely dry. If you are keeping it silver, a lot of people will also use a magic eraser to kind of buff it. That'll help that shine come through as well. Some people do it if they use black or copper patina as well. I haven't really noticed a huge difference in that. It's just been the silver that I've really noticed it. And then once it's dry, and if there's any flux, that was a terrible idea on my part, so I'm going to move this out of the way because I just got flux on there. If there is any flux on your piece, it's gonna mess with your patina. So some people will have, hopefully this isn't too loud, a container, sort of like a Tupperware container that they'll do the patina in. When you're doing your patina, I like to use a glove, just my hand, and then this is great because it gets in those in-between cracks that you really can't see as well. You don't want to let your patina sit once you're finished with it, because it will kind of mess with your glass as well. And it can stain your glass, it can kind of ruin your glass. You just want to rinse it with cold water. People will use everybody recommends distilled water, but I've been seeing a lot of comments about purified water. They'll both wash it in purified water as well as rinse it in purified water, or distilled water, and that's because a lot of people have hard water, so that can affect the patina as well. But basically, once it's dry, cleaned up, ready to go, you don't need a ton. You'll probably add more on the back of it, and you can see it change. It just needs a couple of seconds to interact with the metal, and I can tell this one is going to do what I wanted it to do, because like I said, I did not know what I was doing when I first tried this. But then you can take your toothbrush, and I'm going to show you the difference between these two pieces in a second here of what I've recently learned and my old piece here. So you can see the difference when I talk about these little tips that I've learned. But you do not want to keep this on here for too long. You want to rinse it, you have a couple of minutes, then rinse it. So if you don't mind just giving me a hot second so that I can rinse this off really quickly. So I know that it is so hard to see on here, and the lighting probably doesn't help. I'll take pictures afterwards and post it on like my post section of my page. But right over here, I don't know if you can see, it's kind of more silver than it is black. This isn't really a deep black. Another corner over here, which I know is so hard to see, but it's just a little bit, it's better than I thought it would be, to be honest, but it's not consistent. It's like a little gray instead of black down here. It wouldn't matter if you like let your patina soak on there, it's not going to make a difference. So if I was making this like as a real project and I wasn't happy with the patina before I waxed it, this has to be done before you wax it or anything, I would take it inside again, steel wool, Dawn dish soap, scrub the heck out of it, especially in the areas that, maybe you missed, let it dry, and then you can patina it again. And I will do like a little, I know it's hard to see, but the black on here is just consistent. It's just so beautiful. And on this one, it's just like, eh. And then the final step of making stained glass is to finish it, to polish it, to wax it. I was originally using, this is another thing that definitely changed a lot in my final pieces recently. I was originally using this car wax. It has to have carnauba, I think that's how you say it, wax inside of it, whatever you're using to finish it. This is just what people recommended on TikTok at the time. So I used it and I could never figure it out. You never want to use the sponge that's in here, which is what I learned because it's too abrasive. You want to use a microcloth. But I used a lot of it on a lot of different pieces and I just couldn't figure out why it was sort of hardening on there. And at like weeks after the piece had been dried and just been hanging there, I would notice that the wax was still building up. So I've not been a big fan of it overall. In the very beginning, it's probably because I didn't let it dry quite enough before waxing it. This I'll let sit for 24 hours before I would wax it. But the wax itself, I just couldn't figure it out. So I don't know if that's normal. It never like shined properly. Then people started suggesting pledge, and this is a game changer for finishing your piece off. Let this dry after you patina it, and then you soak it in pledge for like 24 hours, both sides. Just spray the heck out of it, let it sit, let it soak, and then in the morning or whenever you're working on it, just a microcloth and polish it up. And it works so much better than anything I've tried. You don't want to use, I'll let this truck pass, the downfalls of working outside. I don't know if anybody can see my notes on here, but it even says like I haven't used it yet. So much has changed since I originally made this whole plan to go through and talk about making stained glass and show every step of the process, which is why I'm so adamant about these little tips that I've learned. These two. So this was one that I was really unhappy with originally, and I went back and I repatinaed it. And I know it's hard to see, but the black is consistent, beautiful, and you can see that it's like shiny. Hopefully you can see that it's shiny on there. And that's thanks to the pledge. If I had used the wax, you would see like little pieces of hardened yellow on there. I just couldn't figure it out. I don't know if it was me or that's what it is. I don't know. But either way, pledge, definitely the way to go to finish off your piece. You let it sit for 24 hours, let it soak. You can soak it for even longer, spray it twice if you want to, doesn't really matter. And then after about 24 hours, just take a microcloth. If you're using just a regular towel, paper towel, it's a little bit too abrasive, so it will start to take your patina off. So microcloth is the way to go. If you don't like the feeling of it, put on a plastic glove and then scrub it down. That's usually what I do because microcloth is one of those icks that we have. But yeah, so that's pretty much every step of making stained glass. I do intend on doing a full video, edited, perfect, aesthetically pleasing, showing every step of it. But I thought it would be kind of fun, and I did do like a poll on my page to see what people wanted to see, and it was very much a little bit of everything. So I hope that I was able to do that between the two videos. My Wi-Fi did cut out, so I had to jump back on here, but still working out the kinks behind the scenes. Thank you, Anne. But if there is a specific project people want to see or anything, I'm open to it. I don't know how often I will actually be doing lives anymore because there's always technical difficulties, and it seems like after about a half hour, I don't know if my phone gets too hot, if it's the Wi-Fi, something happens and it just shuts off on me and I have to restart it all. So, but for longer version videos, I'm so happy to just kind of do patterns that people want to see or different tips they're looking for, techniques. I'm definitely a beginner learning how to make stained glass. Still very much a beginner with it. The rheostat soldering iron is completely new to me, but I think I've progressed quite a bit. So I just love making it. I don't like to keep any of my pieces, so I would love ideas on things if anybody ever has them. Comment on my posts or whatever you see on there. But thank you all for joining me. I hope it was fun. Hope people learned something in it. Yeah, thanks Anne for chiming in. I appreciate you being here. And I will see you guys next time.